One thing I do is I send them a letter. We don't have meetings in Omaha. Some of our managers, there aren't any meetings, and there are no catechism or anything else. Once every 2 years, I send them a letter. This is it. Roughly one and a half pages or so. The only instruction they get from us. They don't send budgets to us. We don't care about those. Some of the companies use budgets, some don't use budgets. We adjust to them. Some of the managers I talk to a couple times a week because they like to talk frequently. Some of them I talk to literally once a year because they don't like to talk to me. And whatever, it's up to them. I adapt to them. The only thing I tell them, and this letter, which went out January 20th, 2003, it says it's been 2.5 years since my last memo. Now, how many big companies do you have the managers out there? Been 2.5 years since they've heard from the home office. Been 2.5 years since my last memo. Here are a couple things to keep in mind. And number one, and this is number one every time, this doesn't change. It won't change 2 years from now or 4 years from now or 6 years from now. Number one, we can afford to lose money, even a lot of money. We cannot afford to lose reputation, even a shred of reputation. Let's be sure that everything we do in business can be reported on the front page of a national newspaper in an article written by an unfriendly but intelligent reporter. In many areas, including acquisitions, Berkshire's results have benefited from its reputation, and we don't want to do anything that in any way can tarnish it. Last year, Berkshire was ranked by Fortune as the 4th most admired company in the world. This year, we were 3rd in the United States. They just published it. It took us 37 years to get there, but we could lose it in 37 minutes. And that's the message. I mean, we can lose money. It does, nicer to make money, but we'll figure out ways to make money. But we can't lose a shred of reputation because you don't get it back. And you can. I said 37 minutes, but you can lose it a lot faster than that. You can lose it in 5 minutes. And in fact, I was talking to Bruce coming in, and he did some work around Salomon Brothers, and I went back there 11 years ago because this firm, it had the 2nd largest balance sheet in the United States at that time. It was a preeminent firm on Wall Street. John Goodfriend, who ran it, had his picture on the front of Business Week as the king of Wall Street. And in late in April 1991, he made a fateful decision. It was reported to him that an employee down the line had flim-flammed the U.S. Treasury, had broken some rules, tried to play games with him. And John did not report that fact to the Treasury or to the Federal Reserve or to the SEC or to anybody else. He didn't do anything wrong himself, but he got behind the curve. He didn't report it. The president of the company, Tommy Strauss, didn't report it. If you saw that Katie Couric show on Sunday night on the Central Park Jogger, Tom Strauss was on there, but Tom Strauss ended up losing he was president of Salomon Brothers. John was chairman, John Goodfriend. They didn't do anything. They dawdled. And after a few weeks, the same guy that had committed the terrible acts earlier, on May 15th, he did the same thing again at a Treasury auction. And now they were in this terrible pickle because they'd known about this on about April 28th, that this guy was a bad actor, and they hadn't done anything. And now on May 15th, he does the same thing again. And now if they go, they start feeling if they go and talk about it, that people will say, well, why weren't you in here before? So they just kept trying to shove it out of their mind and do other things. And it came within inches of destroying the firm. It destroyed their careers. I mean, John Goodfriend, who'd spent 30 years in Wall Street and had a fine reputation, the king of Wall Street, was brought down by one simple act of omission. All he had to do was pick up the phone. Jerry Corrigan was head of the New York Fed. He had to pick up the phone and say, Jerry, you won't believe this, but this crazy guy in our Treasury Department, a fellow named Mosier, has just done this thing, and I'm terribly embarrassed, and what can we do to make it right? I mean, and Jerry Corrigan, being Jerry Corrigan, would have turned red in the face and gotten very mad and issued a lot of language I couldn't repeat here, but in the end, he would have said, thanks for calling and telling us about it immediately, and we'll slap a fine on you or do whatever is appropriate. And the next day, the firm would have gone on fine, but John Goodfriend, actually, a perfectly okay guy, but he didn't act when it counted. And Tommy Strauss, who was number 2, the same way. And later on, they were fined and certainly kicked out of the securities industry, and Salomon barely survived. 8,000 employees around the world had their future in real jeopardy because of that single act. So just apply the newspaper test. That's what I tell our managers. I could have a 1,000-page book of ethics. I could have all kinds of rules and hundreds of, but in the end, just all you got to do is think about, do you really want what you're doing put on the front page of the paper tomorrow to be read by your parents, by your spouse, by your kids, by your neighbors, by your coworkers? And if you're embarrassed about it, just forget about it. You're all going to do well financially. The nice thing about it is, you live in America in the year 2003. You don't live in Bangladesh. You don't live in America, of 1790 when it would. You live in a society which has a GDP of over 10 trillion, and you can just pick up the crumbs and you're going to do great. You've all got the qualities. It takes three qualities, essentially, to do well, and extremely well, actually, in this country. It takes intelligence, it takes energy, and it takes integrity. Now, everybody in this room has the requisite intelligence. You wouldn't be here if you didn't. I mean, it doesn't take 180 IQs, although I'm sure you all have those, but it takes reasonable intelligence. You're getting a great education. You've got the energy. That's why you've shown up in school. And it takes integrity. And I say, if you don't have integrity, we don't want to hire somebody that's got intelligence and energy if they don't have integrity. We'd rather hire somebody that's dumb and lazy if they don't have integrity, because they probably will never get around to cheating us or doing something of the sort. Last thing in the world I want is somebody that's lacks in. Mosher had intelligence and energy at Solomon. He was head of the government bond trading thing, and he had lots of intelligence and he had lots of energy, and he went to jail, and he almost brought down the firm. And integrity is absolutely an option. You may not be able to throw a football 60 yards, and you may not be able to run the 100 in 9.8. You may not be able to sink three-pointers but you can choose where you stand on the integrity scale. You weren't born wired one way or the other. That is an absolute choice you make. The heroes I've had in life have been the people that I felt stood out in that respect. My number one hero was my dad, but I've had other heroes, Tom Murphy, Ben Graham, people like that. The reason I admired them was not because they were the smartest people in the world, although they were plenty smart. And it wasn't because they made the most money. That meant nothing. It's really because I felt they were the classiest people that I ever met in my life. I mean, I saw them behave over year after year after year in a way that I could write their story on the front page of any newspaper, and even in an unfriendly tone, and I could not do anything that would embarrass them in the least. They behaved extraordinarily well. And having the right heroes, is terribly important. You tell me who a 10-year-old's heroes are, and I can give you a pretty good prediction about how they're going to turn out. You want to choose your heroes very carefully, because you're going to look like them at some point, and you're lucky if you've got the right ones. I'll give you an aside, and then we'll get on to your questions. But it's something, you're not parents yet, most of you. But when you're a parent, you are the natural hero of your child. I mean, you're this great big thing here. There's two of you great big things, and there's a little tiny child dependent on you. Everything. You are the natural hero, and anything to get to school, subsequently everything else, they're going to be shaped more by what they see in this behavior of yours toward them than anything that will impact them later in their lives. And if they want you to be the hero, you can destroy that, of course, and you've seen it done many, many times. But actually, if the parents are proper heroes, the child is about 90% of the way home. And you're lucky if you've had parents like that. And you can be that to your children, or you can be something else, and you're shaping that person.